You're still watching The Pulse with me, Gifty Ando up here. Now, coronavirus, also called COVID-19, continues to dominate headlines as impact of the outbreak reaches unprecedented levels from economies to social life. Here in Ghana, President Akufo-Addo has restricted traveling by state officials, whereas in Europe's Italy, the entire country is on lockdown. Kate Brady is political correspondent with our partners DW, who joins us from Germany with the situation in Europe. Kate, thanks for this afternoon. What's the latest in Europe on the outbreak?
Well, of course, the situation is changing very quickly at the moment, and the numbers do seem to be continuing to rise. And within the European Union, at least, the aim right now is to agree on a coordinated response and how to go forward in measures taken to stop the spread of the coronavirus. Of course, at the moment, the measures are varying from country to country within the European Union. We've heard now as well that Slovenia and Austria are actually going to be closing its borders to Italy. Now, that's quite a controversial move, which has been discussed within the European Union today, and the German Chancellor Angela Merkel and the German Health Minister Jens Spahn said, well, they voiced their criticism, should I say, about such measures today, as of course the effectiveness of closing borders is yet to really be determined. But of course, economic factors, the economic impact of the coronavirus is also of concern within the European Union, and the EU Commission has now said that it will pledge a EU fund of some 7.5 billion euros to help businesses that are impacted by the effects of the coronavirus.
Well, let's focus a bit more on Europe's epicenter, which is Italy now. Some drastic measures have been taken by that government itself. Update us on those measures briefly and tell us how they've been received.
Well, of course, the entire country is now being quarantined. So that's some 60 million people in Italy. So some huge drastic measures there. Schools, universities closed. Most bars and restaurants are already closing at around 6 p.m. on an evening. And of course, looking at pictures of Italy as well, of course, historic sites, huge tourist attractions in Rome and Milan, for example, the streets are simply deserted. Now, of course, people are trying to keep morale high. Many people are staying at home, trying to work from home where possible. But there has been some confusion. There were also reports of riots breaking out earlier this week at several Italian prisons as well, and 7 inmates actually died as a result of those riots which broke out after it was announced that visitors would no longer be allowed to visit prisoners for the foreseeable future until these drastic measures have indeed been lifted. So, of course, Italy is now also looking to its European partners as well for extra support. But right now, as I say, the country does remain under quarantine.
The last time we spoke, COVID-19 had been recorded in almost all of Germany's states, and Germany, of course, is a neighbor of Italy. Has anything changed briefly?
Well, this has changed drastically in the last week. Today we had the 3rd death from coronavirus confirmed here in Germany. Of course, a long way away from those figures that we're seeing in Italy, which has now had more than 630 deaths caused by coronavirus. But the German Chancellor Angela Merkel spoke just earlier today, actually, and said that the main priority now is making sure that these measures are implemented across the country to win time, is what she said, to try and stop the spread of coronavirus. So nothing as drastic here in Germany yet as we're seeing in Italy, but football games, for example, are being played behind closed doors in the German capital here in Berlin. Opera houses, theatres, they're closing their doors until the middle of next month, and many public events, often with numbers over the 1,000 mark, they're being cancelled for the foreseeable future until the spread of coronavirus really is deemed to be slowing down.
And finally, Kate, now that it's been declared a global pandemic, what can you tell us about the EU response? You did mention some figures earlier, but put it all together for us. The EU response and what countries not yet affected, like Ghana, can learn from that response.
Well, of course, every member state of the European Union has now been affected. Italy is the worst. There's been around 10,000 cases there now, and as I say, more than 630 deaths in Italy. Now, one of the largest points of criticism so far has been the number of tests for coronavirus. Many people still voicing criticism that the testing isn't being carried out on such a widespread basis as some health professionals are recommending, and that they aren't being carried out on such a wide scale. But of course, as you mentioned earlier as well, Ghana's president has already restricted travel for many ministers in Ghana, which of course is an effective first step, considering there are currently no cases in Ghana. But of course, going back to basics really is just making sure that people are upkeeping basic hygiene and making sure that those hands are thoroughly washed.
Kate, thank you. This is rather a difficult one for the entire world to deal with. Hopefully it gets better the next week when we come to you. Kate Birdie is political correspondent with our partners DW, joining us all the way from Germany here on The Pulse.